New tonight, the Pentagon has opened a formal investigation into Arizona Democratic Senator Mark Kelly, a retired Navy captain, a former astronaut. The legal move comes in response to a video in which Senator Kelly and several other Democratic lawmakers urge U.S. troops to refuse illegal orders.
Our laws are clear. You can refuse illegal orders.
The Defense Department citing a rarely used federal statute that allows retired service members to be recalled to active duty for possible court-martial. The Pentagon says that Kelly's remarks may have interfered with the, quote, loyalty, morale, and good order and discipline of the armed forces. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth accusing the senator of bringing discredit upon the armed forces. President Trump has publicly labeled Kelly and his colleagues traitors and floated the word sedition. Kelly says the real oath is to the Constitution. Joining us now to discuss is NBC News military analyst, retired four-star Army General Barry McCaffrey. General, thanks for being with us tonight.
Good to be with you, Joyce.
So how unusual is it to see the Pentagon threaten to recall a sitting U.S. senator to active duty for potential court-martial?
I think we're starting to look like the government of North Korea. I've never encountered anything like this in my entire life. On the face of it, it's absurd to suggest there's a criminal element to calling for disobeying illegal orders. There's a separation of powers. These are 6 serving members of Congress. There's command influence. I was a general court-martial authority 2-star general division commander. Had I announced in public that the accused should be hanged, they would have pulled me out of office the next day. So this behavior is absurd and lawless.
Troops are taught to refuse unlawful orders. So where is the line between a legitimate warning and interference in the chain of command?
Well, look, some of the illegal order red lines are easy to follow. If it's a violation of the Uniform Code of Military Justice, it's an illegal order. It gets more difficult when you're talking national security policy. The War Powers Act, the Emergency Powers of 1973. And so right now, with sort of dubious legal authority, we are involved using National Guard and active troops internally in domestic law enforcement missions, and we're also taking military actions against Venezuela, against drug cartels, claiming that we have extended the terrorism designation to these outfits, and therefore they're subject to military attack. All this needs to be sorted out in Washington, not by an F-A-18 pilot or a staff sergeant in a special operations unit.
You know, President Trump has talked about sedition, even references to capital punishment. What does that do to morale and trust inside the ranks?
Well, look, there's no way to get around this. This behavior literally sounds more like Kim Jong-un in North Korea than it does the U.S. justice system. UCMJ is being trashed, brought into discredit. UCMJ is a document, a policy passed by the United States Congress. It's a modern, adaptable system of legal justice. And Trump cannot be allowed to publicly call for revenge prosecutions, and certainly not inside the Department of Defense and Uniform Code of Military Justice. I think all this, to be blunt, is impeachable conduct. These people should be, by Congress, pulled out of office.
So why are we not seeing that?
Mr. Trump is a genius, tactical politician. Fortunately, his support seems to be evaporating rapidly, but he has dominated Congress. The Democrats tried to get an authorization of the use of military force through the Senate to bar him from actions against Venezuela. It didn't pass. So the Republicans in Congress are loyally following his directions. They've surrendered their power to control the appropriations of money. They're allowing him to put people into office without proper Senate vetting. It's an astonishing state of affairs. Thank God for the court system and the media and the voters who are starting to pay attention.
For service members who are watching who may one day face a morally or a legally questionable order, what's your advice to them?
Ask the sergeant major if it's okay. If it's an obvious crime against UCMJ, don't do it. So most of these situations are only difficult when it gets to Washington national security policy. Our troops are trained from the day we get them in the armed forces to not conduct criminal operations. The generals won't follow obviously criminal directions. But we've got a problem right now where we're operating in the gray areas of national security policy. And in the background, we've got the commander-in-chief and the secretary of defense, the only two people who can give orders to the armed forces, acting like they're lawless people themselves.
What does your gut tell you about what the end game is here? What is the motivation? Is it a deterrent? Is it to get people to fall in line? What is their objective?
I actually don't think they have an objective. I think right now they're drunk with power. I think the Secretary of Defense is shallow. He doesn't know what he's doing. He has no personal staff. He's fired every chief of service almost, except the Army, if I remember. They fired all the Judge Advocate General officers in the Pentagon. I think these people are drunk with power. They're issuing orders and governing by whim and fancy. They watch something on TV and they put on Truth Social something that in many cases appears to be utterly lawless.
And you know, the long-term impact of all of that is something for another conversation and many more questions, which I have for you, but we're out of time for tonight. General McCaffrey, thank you so much for being with us. We'll talk with you again very soon.
Good to be with you.